Happy Tuesday, Foxy listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 47, The Value of Community. Today, I sat down with Peter Montoya and we discussed loneliness, relationships, symbolic substitutes, and even honey badgers. Wondering how these things connect? Well, let's get to it.
Welcome to Fox Talks Business Podcast with your host, Tanya Fox. Tanya has been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, owning retail, service, and franchise. She holds no punches and is never afraid to talk about the nitty-gritty. Together, you'll explore the good, the bad, and the motivational of business life, turning obstacles into opportunities and failures into successes. So grab your favorite drink and let's have some fun. Here's your host, speaker, crafter, and collaborator, Tanya Fox.
Most speakers who teach have not done it for themselves, and most entrepreneurs don't know how to speak. But Peter Montoya is the rare exception. He's a thought leader who has also accomplished big things. Peter bootstrapped his successful software company from an idea in 2008 to a multi-million-dollar exit in 2018, without capital, investors, or partners. Peter knows how to inspire people by tapping into their unique purposes. Peter is a truly fascinating and multifaceted guy with decades of experience in speaking to audience about his business knowledge, inspirational journey, and human behavioral insight. Though Peter struggled through school with an undiagnosed ADHD, he was admitted to and graduated from the University of California, Irvine in political science. Post-college, he became a traveling speaker and salesman, chalking up over 3,000 presentations and living in over 22 major cities. Peter went on to found a successful advertising agency and software platform, and it was dedicated to financial service professionals. He quickly became the industry guru, writing numerous books, including one of his best-selling works, The Brand Called You, one of my personal favorites. He also wrote The Personal Branding Phenomenon, and his newest book is going to be released soon, The 10 Secrets of Leadership Power. He now pursues his passion for humanity and the planet. He sincerely believes that all people and organizations have a special role in perpetuating the survival of our species, our civilization, and our planet. He speaks thoughtfully and passionately about the need for transformational leadership in today's world. So thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Peter. I do have to say I'm a little starstruck because I have followed you for quite a few years now. And it all started for me when I read your book, The Brand Called You. So I'm really excited to be able to share your story with our guests.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm flattered.
So tell us a little bit, for those that maybe haven't followed you as much as I have, tell us a little bit about your backstory up until this point.
Sure. I graduated with a degree 30 years ago now in political science because I thought I wanted to be a politician, but it turned out I didn't have the ambition or sex drive for politics. You really need both. And I've got ambition, but not the sex drive of most politicians. So my first job out of college was I went to work for the biggest motivational speaker in the world. And I really enjoyed a lot of the personal development industry. I love all the tools, the techniques. I love self-reflection. I love coaching. Most importantly, I really love being around people who are transforming. So nothing is better than watching people realize they can be something they didn't know they could be,
right,
and see their life differently. That's what gets me excited and out of bed every morning. So I did that for a while. I worked for a couple more sales and motivational speakers. I then worked for an advertising agency, started my own advertising agency in 1998, specializing only in financial service professionals. I wrote a book called The Brand Called You, and I wrote a couple of versions of that, Brand Called You for Financial Advisors. Then I started a software company in 2008, which was did marketing automation in the financial services space. It was called Marketing Pro, and I sold it to a wonderful company called FMG Suites in 2018. And then most recently, I've started a real-world community and life school dedicated to human well-being called thriveunion.org, if you want to see that. And now I'm also relaunching my speaking career, specializing in developing leaders and high-performance teams. That is the quick overview.
And yes, we will have the link because I've watched quite a few videos that the Thrive Union has put out.
Oh,
They're
wonderful.
fantastic.
Thank you.
So in one speech that you had done in March in San Diego, you kind of had talked about loneliness and how
Yeah.
it's sort of the new cancer. And I think this is so key for solopreneurs and entrepreneurs. So can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like what your
Yeah.
perspective is on that?
Oh, great point. So loneliness really is the new cancer, and it is killing us, and it is more dangerous than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So the backstory on that is this: is Harvard University has been running the longest study on human longevity. So back in 1920, they found 400 men, about 20, 21 years old. They were sophomores at Harvard, and also blue collar working families in South Boston. And they wanted to basically figure out what leads to a longer, happier, better functioning life. So they measured every single aspect of our human existence, from diet, education, genetics, relationships, marriage, work. And they wanted to find out what was the number one criteria that led to a longer, happier, better life with better brain function. Now, Tanya, you probably already have it or tipped off at the answer, but what is the number one factor if you want to live a longer, happier, better life with better brain function?
I would say interaction.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is those human relationships. So relationships is as important or more important than diet, exercise, and sleep. All mammals are social beings. Well, except the honey badger. The honey badger clearly doesn't care. Don't know that reference, search that on YouTube. The honey badger don't care, and you'll know. Honey badgers aren't terribly social, but every mammal other than that is, and especially human beings. So when I became an entrepreneur back when I was 28, I really lived by the mantra, if it is to be, it's up to me. I was hyper individualistic. And, I worked in an office by myself for the first year. I, put my, head to the grindstone, and I did whatever it took to make my businesses work. And that can be a very lonely experience. It wasn't until 2013, 14, when I actually entered a new relationship, that I started to realize that this pit of loneliness that I was feeling, this kind of lack of wholeheartedness. And when I would go into meetings or rooms, I never felt like I belonged, was actually a really important, painful sign, like being hungry or thirsty or too hot or too cold, of being lonely and isolated. And that's when I first really realized how important relationships are.
Yeah. And I think that's true. Sometimes we don't realize that we have isolated ourselves until we all of a sudden take a look around and go, oh, there's nobody
Mm-hmm.
here. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've done it to myself. And I think entrepreneurs, especially when they're working by themselves, tend to do that because we put so much effort and we think we have to put so much time into just the business, especially when you're starting it, and then you kind of get stuck into that, repetitive cycle of just constantly being by yourself.
Ah, such a great point. Because as an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur is only a part-time job. You can work any 12 hours of the day that you want to.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, I always had lots of friends. I've always had. However, I never didn't really practice being in relationship. And the truth is, we probably need an hour or two a day of empathetic being with somebody else. And that really is counter to the lifestyle of an entrepreneur. For an entrepreneur, you're constantly trading time for productivity. You're always going, okay, how can I get 5 more minutes in to finish this one project, get it out the door, get another billable hour, get another project done. And so you're always under the gun to get more done in a shorter amount of time. And the importance of relationships is you need an hour or two a day of just having coffee, playing games, socializing, having dinner, where you're just really with somebody else. And that way of being is really counter to how the productivity mind of an entrepreneur works.
And do you find it's getting worse? Like with social media, a lot of people think, well, I've got 500 friends. I talk to people all of the time. I interact with people, but it's not face to face. So how important is that the actual vision of someone else being in the same vicinity?
Yeah, you landed on a phenomenal point there. So psychologists call those symbolic substitutes. Symbolic substitutes are things that make us think we're getting what we need without actually delivering it. So pets, as much as I love dogs and cats, they actually don't give us what we need in the form of a complex, mutually reciprocal relationship. Adult films might give you a rush of adrenaline and dopamine and serotonin, but it doesn't give you what an intimate relationship can give you. Social media is another one that makes us think, hey, I'm connected, I know what's going on, but it does not give you what you need. When you are face to face, when you can actually see somebody else, neurologists thinks it fires something called a mirror neuron in your mind, which helps you reciprocate the feeling and releases very important chemicals like oxytocins and endorphins, which is what you need for better health.
Do you find that, since you've been sort of speaking on this, do you find that people are really craving that interaction now? Like, do you find that society is starting to sort of make the turn back towards that?
All the research says is we're going 180 million miles an hour in the wrong direction right now.
Right.
So as much as I'm out there preaching the gospel about this and saying, hey, we need to be in better relationships, this is what makes us feel better, we're in a society that rewards productivity. It rewards money. And most entrepreneurs, and I know this because this was my mindset, is, I wanted to have a big, giant, huge exit, which I did have. And then we basically want to consume. How can I buy a bigger house, buy a bigger car and a yacht and live fancy free? And the strange thing is most entrepreneurs' vision is they want to be alone somewhere, which is really kind of odd when you think about it. They want to buy a house out on a beach, some private beach somewhere or on the mountain somewhere, and they want to be alone. So they want to be wealthy and alone. And all of the research says in the field of positive psychology is wealthy and alone is going to lead to a shorter life with less satisfaction and worse brain activity. So what we actually want to do is focus more on relationship, more on purpose. What is the meaningful contribution we're providing to humanity, and actually being in a community of people we're seeing them every single day with lots of low intensity and high intensity contact.
Yeah. And I think it's true, like what you were saying, that I know when you ask people, like, the age old question of what would you do if you won the lottery? And they're like, oh, I'd buy a house on an island somewhere.
Right.
So that everybody would leave me alone. And I was like, no. And then they ask me, right? They're like, what was the first thing that you do? And I'm like, I would probably hire a team of people.
Right.
But I'm going to stay where I am. Like, I don't want, because to me, I just think, big house, more stuff to clean. It's just...
So the direction I'm headed is that I actually have what's called a schmamly. So I have my family, which is my brothers and my dad. And unfortunately, they don't live nearby me. So I've created a schmamly, like family schmamly. Yeah. And it's actually 3 other couples. And we decided, hey, we're going to basically create a family unit. So it's couples there. Some of them have adult kids. We're going to spend our major holidays together, at least one family vacation. And we're moving toward either some kind of a family living situation with, all 20 of us, or some kind of a compound that we can actually be together more till we all realize the value of being in family relations. Being in relationships.
And I think that's, my uncle used to always joke about that too, that he wanted to start, a big family commune. We each have our own house on this big acreage, but we'd work together. And I was like, yeah, sign me up. That sounds awesome. Because I miss those days. And that's sort of the way I was raised. There was constantly people coming in and out of the house, and people just dropped by. That was just what you did. And when I moved to Alberta, and I kind of went door to door to the neighbors and sort of said, hey, we're moving in. And I just wanted to, say hi and introduce myself and bring some cookies. The looks that I got were no, we don't knock on each other's doors.
Yeah, I know.
And I was like, oh, so me bringing a coffee over in my pajamas is going to not be good. But that was just that's what I was so used to. Right. And I do find that I crave that. I look and I go, nobody does that anymore. Now it's, it's the big, the comedians use it so much, but it's true. The doorbell rings and it's everybody freezes in the house and they're like, what is that? Who's here? Right. Did anybody get attacked?
We're under assault.
Whereas before it was remember the days when you used to pick up the phone to find out who was calling?
Right.
So
you are exactly right. So I grew up in that kind of in a neighborhood too, where people just knocked on each other's doors and they would come over and play and stuff like that and see who was around. kids played outside of the house, and now our houses more or less are fortresses. And if
Yeah.
you look at the design of most American homes, especially in the suburbs, they have these big uninviting garage doors. The windows are usually curtained in some kind of way. The door is usually blocked off, and basically you can't see in anyway. And I certainly understand a need for privacy, but it also is incredibly uninviting. There's no social spaces in the front. There's no porches anymore. People don't go out on their front lawn and just sit in lawn chairs and wait for neighbors to come by. There's no kids playing out anymore because everyone's being entertained in the back of the house, usually in isolation.
Yeah. When you were talking about sort of that you made the decision to leave and sort of pivot where your direction was going, how did you come to that decision? Because I think there's a lot of people that are sort of stuck in that of going, do I need to make a complete life change or do I just need to change something? So for
Well,
you, what kind of was that key indicator for you?
yeah, so you're going really deep and very personal, and I'll tell you what it was. All right. So, I was suffering from a lack of wholeheartedness, and wholeheartedness is self-love, self-confidence, and also authenticity, being true to yourself. And I would go to any kind of gatherings, and I would usually kind of be a wallflower, and I really had this incredible negative self-talk. No one cares that I'm here. No one wants to talk to me. I could just leave and no one would really mind. And I started thinking that. And then obviously I had behavior that actually followed that. And basically put off this kind of screen that said, don't talk to me. So it created a vicious cycle, which only reinforced itself. And I was thinking, what I was lacking is a relationship. So I met this incredible woman back in 2011, which is my wife, Amy. We eventually got married. And yet I found out that that pit was still not there. And I was talking with a really good friend of mine, who's a great community organizer named Bart Campolo. And I was kind of describing this pit that I was feeling, not really feeling like I belonged anywhere. And he goes, yeah, what you're lacking is a community. I kind of went, okay, yeah, right, whatever. And I kind of just brushed it off. I mean,
Yeah.
the word had no value to me. But, I started thinking about it. And the last time I was really in community was probably in college. I was part of a fraternity and I had this brotherhood of friends and I kept in touch with them. And I had a place where I knew them, they knew me, they knew my idiosyncrasies, my weirdness, and still liked me anyway. And I did not have that anymore. I didn't have a tribe. So I finally got it into my thick skull that that's what was lacking in my life. And so that's what I have now through Thrive Union. And it's where I know them, they know me. I can share embarrassing stories about myself and actually laugh in a way that I'm not feeling that I'm being ridiculed because I know that I belong. And once I became part of a tribe, my self-confidence increased, my self-esteem increased, and my authenticity. I feel better about myself than I ever have in my 51 years of living.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about Thrive Union, what it is, how you started it, and then what people can expect from it.
Yeah. So I really wanted a real world community, not an online community where people could connect that was not driven by any kind of a doctrine or a belief system. So it's not religious. It's not political. You don't have to, give blood or, do some kind of sacred oath. It's just a bunch of really good people who want to be around good people and live a good life. So we have meetings every single Sunday morning here in Orange County, California. It's the only chapter we have so far, where we do meditation, we do connection exercises. We really want to be in relationship and practice our empathy. And then we also learn some lessons for living, which means how can we make our life better? I really, love personal development, but I don't think it should be so serial. I don't think that personal development should happen just once a year when you read a book or once a year when you go to a course. I want little pieces of it all the time. So I'm always with a group of people who are living good lives, trying to be better at living life and being connected. And that's what Thrive Union, which you can see at thriveunion.org.
Yeah. And I think that's key, is being able, they say you are the sum of the 5 main people that you hang around with. And I think sometimes people find that hard to find those people because, like you said, it was so much easier when you were younger and you were in university because you were just naturally surrounded by people. So it was a lot easier to find people. And now I hear that so much. And then people are like, well, I don't know where to meet somebody. Like what am I going to do? Stand in the supermarket in the fruit department and see if people need a friend? Like it just doesn't work that way.
So isolation today is our default. It is far
Yeah.
easier any day of the week after a long, hard day. Just come home, get on your iPad, iPhone, TV, lay in a horizontal position and watch what you want to watch and be entertained that you want to be entertained. That is the default. And that is bad for you. It is
Yeah.
scientifically provenly bad. And I don't care how introverted you are or how much social anxiety you have, you are shaving years off your life every single time you do that. And I do it sometimes too, but it is not my default.
Yeah.
So I want people out eating, having coffee and drinks and reading books with other people and talking, engaging in some kind of small groups. That is what we need to be doing, both at a micro level, which means, making ourselves less lonely and less isolated, and also on a macro level. I know you're in Canada, but being Canadian usually means you share a lot in our media landscape.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
and the politics here in America are ungodly divisive. It is a more or less an atmosphere of demolition where we're here not to solve problems, but just decimate our competitors so we can get
Yeah.
our own way. And that is no way to live. The most important conversation we should be having right now, at least in America, is how can we communicate better so we can solve really big problems.
Yeah. And I think we're that way here too. Like we've been noticing it more and more. We weren't really big on like, what they say, like the attack ads and stuff. And now I would say over the last probably 2 elections, that's all it's been. So,
Yeah.
and I've been noticing it of going, okay, so we know how much you don't like the other person, but what do you stand for? Could we
Mhm.
like hear anything about that? Or is it just who can do a better commercial?
Yeah, it is so bad. It is so negative. And that way of thinking is really, really intoxicating. And I've
Yeah.
gotten into it. I've seen the political arguments online, and I've gotten myself in this kind of intellectual righteousness where I know that I'm right. I know, quote unquote, know that I'm right. Somebody else is wrong. And it's
Yeah.
really a bad way of being. It's called being judgmental, is what that way is being.
Yeah.
It does not help you, doesn't help your relationships, doesn't help our society, doesn't help us move forward as a species.
Yeah. And I find it more and more like we have all of these pages that you can find in almost any town that you're on, these rant and rave pages where
Oh
people will
yeah.
just comment on whatever's going on. And it's crazy how many
Yeah.
people I go, will say, oh, I never comment on it. I just find it really funny to read. And
Mhm.
I think, isn't that sad that your entertainment is someone's anger?
Right.
But
Oh, I
that's
couldn't
where
agree
we're
more.
heading, is that
It is.
that is what we're considering as entertainment, is negativity or trashing somebody else. And I I cry for that because I
I do
think
too.
I don't want that to be it. I want us to be celebrating successes, not seeing how far we can drag people down into a pit.
There is something really, really addictive about those intellectual arguments where you can get into judgment and righteousness. I think you get rushes of adrenaline is probably one of the chemicals that's going on in your body. It also increases anxiety. So the strange thing about that is that people who are probably more doing that more and more are more and more isolated. And also their politics start going more and more conservative, which is usually more fear driven. It
Hmm.
makes them less likely to be involved in civic activities, makes them less likely to vote, makes them more likely to own guns and be involved in violence. So it's really, really toxic and dangerous for us as a society.
Yeah. And I think we need those people, I think entrepreneurs have sort of that built-in leadership within them that they just need to awaken to help create these communities and stuff. And you talk a lot about leadership and how that is powerful. You actually have a new book. Has it been
Yeah.
released yet? The
Nope.
Leadership Power?
We're probably about 45 days away. It is on
Okay.
leadership power, and more or less it's a book about that really breaks down in detail how do you get that it quality. So how
Yeah.
do you become a person that other people want to follow? And when you've met really influential leaders, what do they have that you don't have? So we broke it down into really pragmatic, easy to implement steps so you can improve your leadership power. The first thing is leadership of self, that which is called empowerment. So how do you get more of what you want for the benefit of all more often? Next, we want you leading your circles and your families and friends. And then third, how do you be part of the conversation, how to lead humanity forward? That's what we're most interested in.
Yeah. And so that's going to be coming out soon. So I know people can go to your website and be notified of when that is coming out, I
Correct. They can
believe.
go to petermontoya.com and they can click the link there and we'll actually notify them when that book comes out. That's absolutely correct.
So if people are interested in learning more about Thrive Union or even following you more, where can they go to find more information about you?
So the best place actually is on YouTube. So go to youtube.com/Thrive Union. We have absolutely an amazing library of really phenomenal video essays. And these are all on lessons for living. So no matter what issue you might be facing in your life, whether it be a boundary issue or someone is taking advantage of you, or whether you need to have a hard conversation with somebody, or you're having a hard time with empathy, we give these 5-minute little videos that distill the concepts so you know exactly how to implement it. And that's probably the easiest place to get tagged into us. And the second place, they can visit my website, which is petermontoya.com.
And so if you think back, I always like asking this because it always makes me learn so much. What is one like piece of advice or like a quote or something that really stuck with you, that really kind of changed your perspective on something?
You know, I think that the biggest thing that changed my life is what I call the feedback agreement. And my wife and I developed it maybe about 6 or 7 months ago. Do I have time for three more minutes, Tanya?
Absolutely. Yep.
All
Yep,
right.
for sure.
So my wife came to me and she asked me the most dreaded question that any husband ever wants to hear. She said, Peter, I want you to tell me if I ever start getting too heavy. I'm like, oh no, I'm never telling you that. No, Peter, you know, we're all a little self-delusional and sometimes our pants don't fit quite as well, but yet we still think we look okay. And if ever I start getting a little too heavy, I need you to tell me. I said, wife, there is no way I'm going to tell you that.
Not jumping
Peter.
into that pit.
Peter, I'm telling you right now, I'm giving you permission. If it comes up, you can tell me, and I promise you I won't get mad. I'm demanding upon you, if I ever get too heavy, you must tell me. I said, won't do it. You must. I said, okay, fine. It's now.
Meanwhile, you have all of these like, it's a trap. It's a trap.
I did. And of course, she lost her mind. What? She promised she wouldn't. But what came from that is that, you know, for some reason, a lot of married couples and even just couples get locked into this thing where they can't give their spouse feedback. We build these invisible defensible walls which say, don't comment on me. As if you comment on me in some way that's constructive, I will be offended and I will think you won't love me anymore. And my wife and I both said, you know what, we both have feedback for each other about how we operate in the world, both toward ourselves, toward our kids, in business. And why are we shutting ourselves off from the most valuable insight we've got on the planet, which is our spouse? So we developed the feedback agreement, and in that feedback agreement, it basically says, you know, I'll be open for coaching. I realize you're giving it to me because, you know, feedback is a gift. I'll only ask questions to help me clarify, but I won't argue with you when you give me feedback.
Yeah.
When you're delivering feedback, it'll be kind, it'll be honest, and it'll also be given without attachment. So if I give my wife feedback, it's not like I'm expecting her to implement it. I'm just giving her feedback so she gets better. And that little agreement has revolutionized both my marriage and also has provided me the most valuable tools for growth. Feedback is the oxygen of growth. You don't need to hire expensive coaches like Tanya and I. All you need to do is empower the people that you love and trust around you to give you kind, honest, and genuine feedback.
Yeah. And I think that's so true. Like whenever I go out and I do speaking, my husband usually never comes. And when he does come, I know that he will tell me the absolute truth.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I do have to sit and prepare myself for it. And I'm very careful of when I ask. He knows that. He knows that when I, like your wife, he knows when I ask, it's because I truly want to know. And it usually comes with a sigh. I'm like, okay, what did you think? But he knows that, you know, he still delivers it nicely. But
he does.
Because he knows me so well, I think that you're right in that, is that he sees so many other sides of me and he knows what my potential is more than anybody else, that he can honestly say, you know, it was good. I think it was good, but I don't think you were as genuine, or, you know, I think you could have had, you know, you could have done this better. You could have done that better. 'Cause he sees all of those, he
Mhm.
sees what I'm like. He knows a lot more of the backstory than what other people do. And I find some of my friends will, I have those ones that, I know I ask them and they'll always say, you were fantastic. It was amazing, so
Right.
I know I have that elsewhere. But I think it's important, like you said, I think it's really important to get that honest feedback that we can take a second and take a moment to go, I need this, because if I don't get that feedback, how can I improve myself? If I think
Right.
that everything's just perfect, why improve if everything's good?
Right.
So
Right.
I love that the feedback agreement that you guys have. I think it's
It's been
important.
phenomenal. I've instituted it there inside my company. So we actually have an institutional feedback agreement. So basically anybody can give anybody else feedback. And the only caveat is the person receiving the feedback gets to decide when they get feedback.
Yeah.
So it's not like I got feedback for you. We're in front of 45 people and now I'm going to embarrass you by giving you feedback. It's, I have feedback for you. Let me know when you want it. And usually it's sometime, not in the middle of under fire when things are
Yeah.
happening. Is usually when things are quiet, down in a quiet office, or my wife and I almost always do it in bed at night before we go to sleep.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think that's great. I think we all need to find, either a spouse or someone that we can do that with, who you feel that you can be, honest with, and be able to learn how to take criticism. I think we
Mm-hmm.
have built ourselves not to take it anymore.
Yeah.
And as soon as we do, it was like you said, we build that wall and then
Uh-huh.
we're just like, oh, this person is attacking to me. And then we just go to war.
Right.
It's like,
Exactly.
it's just attacking right away. And then it just turns into a fight. Like I find people will throw stuff out that you're like, what are you talking about? Like
Yeah.
they're pulling stuff from 7 years ago. They're like,
Oh, yeah.
here's an arrow. I'm just going to keep throwing them.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And the small reframe I'll give you is it's not criticism, it's feedback. And feedback is a gift because feedback is the oxygen of growth. So whenever someone's giving you feedback, they're actually giving you a gift. It's a really important reframe.
Yeah. And I think that's true. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to chat with you today. And so what is coming up for you? What do you have going on? Because you're doing a lot of speaking now.
I am. I'm doing a lot of speaking now to organizations on leadership and high performance teams. That's kind of my focus area there. I'm also in development on a podcast called the Peter Montoya Leadership Experience,
Oh,
which
exciting.
I really hope to launch in the next month or so. And we're looking for call-in guests, by the way. So if you want to talk about your stories with your bad bosses, if you got a current bad boss and want to fix that problem, call us up. If you're a
awesome.
boss with unmotivated, apathetic employees and want to fix that, we can also work on leadership problems, solutions for bosses too. And you can find that on our website. And then the book and the podcast are probably my next two big adventures, including more speaking.
Well, I'm excited for that to release and to be able to read that. Like I said, I just loved your other books and we'll continue to follow you. So we'll have all of the links where people can find you and Thrive Union, and keep us informed of what's coming down the pipeline.
Tanya, you're doing an amazing podcast. You're providing an amazing service. So thank you so much for the great work you're doing.
Thank you. Every time after I do an interview, I take about 10 to 15 minutes to go sit in my favorite chair in the house and just really go over in my head everything that happened during the interview, both during our on-air time and our off-air time. And I find it really helps me to reflect on the lessons that I learned, because I learned so much from doing these interviews. And as I was sitting there and I was thinking about when Peter was talking about community and how important it is, I realized something that had just happened hours before that I realized was why his message was resounding so strongly with me. See, we're in the midst of just getting ready to start renovating our main bathroom. And so we were having a tub being delivered. Well, the tub got dropped off and my husband and one of his friends from work was there to help bring the tub in. But the tub was 34 inches and my door is 32 inches. And no matter how you try to figure it out, math just tells you that that's not going to work. Now, had I been here by myself, I, wouldn't have been able to lift the tub, but it probably would have resulted in me sitting on the middle of my lawn crying, thinking that from then on I was going to have to shower in my front lawn. That's just going to be what life looks like now. Now, eventually I would have gotten to the solution that we got to, but there would have been a lot of blame and a lot of tears and a lot of other emotional stuff that went on before I got to that solution. But because I had some of my community around me, we were able to kind of laugh at the situation that we were in, which took out a lot of the stress, which I wouldn't have had that had I not had people around me. And we were able to come to the solution that we could just take the 3 pieces apart and it would make easier to bring into the house. So I now have 3 pieces of a tub, but I have them inside my living room. I had a lot of laughs and I have some great memories of this reno and why there's a tub sitting in the middle of my living room. You can head over to my social media pages if you want to see pictures of the actual tub sitting in my living room. But that's why Peter's message resounded with me so much, because sometimes, especially as entrepreneurs, we block ourselves off thinking that we have to come up with all of the solutions ourselves. And we've convinced ourselves that saying the words, "I need help," means that we're weak, when really being able to say those words to me means that you're the strongest person out there, because it is together that we are stronger. And it's easier to go through things when you have somebody that you can laugh about it with. So I want you to take time to really sit down today and think about who's in your community. What are you doing to solidify those relationships? What are you doing to help those relationships flourish and grow? If you don't have a community, then what actions are you taking to try to create that? Are you putting yourself into situations where you can meet people who are like you and start building your community? Be the leader if you need to and start a community. And don't be afraid to ask for help, because at the end of the day, sometimes that ask for help is how we start building a community. I want to thank Peter so much for coming on the show. He has definitely been somebody that I have looked up to for a long time, and I was so honored that he was able to take time to talk with me. And I can't wait to read his new book as soon as it's released, and we'll make sure we let you know. And no matter what you're doing, whether you're trying to get a tub through a door that is just 2 inches too small, whether you're faced with a huge problem, or whether you're trying to find yourself a community or grow your own, make sure that you're having fun. Because if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?